We're just going to continue to search. We ain't going to give up till she's back home.
I want to get it out, and I want to keep it out so nobody forgets in case somebody has seen something.
So let's start. February 14th, 2000, Asha Degree disappears. Investigators say Degree disappeared from her bedroom in the middle of the night on Valentine's Day, sometime between 2:30 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. There was no sign of forced entry and no promising scent trail for search dogs to follow.
On that evidence matched Anna Lee Dedmon. However, due to her being young, her parents, Roy and Connie Dedmon, were listed as suspects. These new documents today focused on another daughter, Lizzie Dedmon, and new information we learned after the DNA match was revealed.
I thank God for the 9 years that we did get to have her. And I do miss all the years, and it makes me sad for what I have missed.
In order to understand the disappearance of 9-year-old Asha Degree, it is important to begin with the context of her family life and the ordinary circumstances that surrounded her final weekend. Asha Degree was born on August 5, 1990, in Shelby, North Carolina, a small town west of Charlotte. She was the youngest child of Harold and Aquila Degree and had one older brother named O'Brien. The Degree household was often described as close-knit, stable, and loving. Harold worked shifts at the Pittsburgh plate glass plant, sometimes holding more than one job to support his family, while Aquila worked at the Kauai America piano plant. Both parents were active members of their church, the Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church, and they raised their children with strict but caring boundaries. The family lived in a modest home on Oakcrest Drive in a rural neighborhood just outside Shelby. They did not own a computer at the time, because both parents believed technology could bring harmful outside influences into the home. They limited television as well, especially the news, which they felt was too negative and frightening for young children. Instead, the family's life revolved around school, sports, relatives who lived nearby, and regular church activities. Asha was known for being shy, cautious, and respectful, but she was also bright and capable. She excelled in the 4th grade at Falston Elementary and played point guard on her youth basketball team. Friends and teachers described her as polite and disciplined. She was known to be afraid of the dark, wary of strangers, and particularly frightened of dogs, details that would later make her disappearance even harder to explain. The events leading to Asha's disappearance began during the weekend of February 12 and 13, 2000. On Saturday, February 12, she participated in a basketball game that ended in her team's first loss of the season. During the game, she fouled out and blamed herself for the defeat, leaving the court in tears and feeling she had let her teammates down. Although her family and coach reassured her, the disappointment lingered. Later that evening, she spent time with cousins, enjoyed Valentine's candy, and seemed in better spirits. On Sunday, February 13, the Degree family attended church as usual, shared lunch at a relative's home, and returned to their own house for a quiet evening. By all accounts, Asha was happy that day, laughing with her brother and carrying a new Tweety Bird purse she had won at school. That night, Shelby experienced a severe storm with heavy rain and strong winds. At around 9 p.m., a car accident nearby knocked out power to the neighborhood. Asha and O'Brien went to bed early, around 8 p.m., dressed in their pajamas and sharing their bedroom as always. Harold returned home from work around 12:30 a.m., by which time the electricity had come back. He checked on both children and found them asleep. He stayed awake watching television for a while, then looked in on them again at 2:30 a.m. before going to bed himself. At that time, both Asha and her brother were still safely in their beds. Sometime after 2:30 a.m., O'Brien recalled hearing his sister's bed creak. Half asleep, he thought she was getting up to use the bathroom. In reality, she had gathered items into her school backpack, dressed herself, and slipped quietly out of the house into the storm. Between approximately 3:45 and 4:15 a.m., at least 2 motorists spotted a small child matching Asha's description walking along Highway 18 about a mile south of her home. One truck driver noticed the girl in white clothing with a backpack walking determinedly in the rain. Concerned, he turned his vehicle around multiple times to get a closer look. When he finally slowed and rolled down his window to check on her, the child bolted off the roadside and disappeared into the darkness of the woods. Another driver also reported seeing the girl and initially mistook her for a short woman. Both later realized they had likely seen Asha. These would become the last confirmed sightings of her. At 5:45 a.m., Aquila woke to prepare her children for the school day. Because the power outage had prevented baths the night before, she intended to get them up early. Entering the children's room, she found only O'Brien asleep. Asha's bed was empty, and her backpack was missing. Panicked, she searched the house, the yard, and the family cars, then called relatives across the street, but no one had seen Asha. By 6:39 a.m., Harold called 911, and police arrived within minutes. Despite deploying search dogs, no scent trail could be followed, likely because of the heavy overnight rain. The Degree family, neighbors, and local authorities began an intensive search. Within 2 days, on February 15, volunteers discovered several objects in a storage shed on the Turner family's property, near where Asha had been last seen. Among the items were candy wrappers matching treats from Asha's basketball game, a green marker, a pencil, and a Mickey Mouse hair bow believed to be hers. Strangely, there was also a small wallet-sized photo of an unknown African-American girl who was never identified despite checks at local schools. This mysterious photograph has remained one of the unresolved curiosities of the case. The trail soon went cold. After more than 9,000 hours of searching and canvassing within a 2 to 3 mile radius, investigators scaled back the manhunt by February 20, 2000. The case then entered a frustrating phase with no solid leads. 18 months later, in August 2001, a major discovery was made. A construction worker preparing a site in Burke County, about 26 miles north of Shelby, unearthed 2 plastic trash bags buried off the roadside. Inside was Asha's backpack with her name written inside. The bag contained clothes, school supplies, and 2 items that puzzled investigators: a copy of Dr. Seuss's Mollygots Pool checked out from Asha's school library, and a New Kids on the Block t-shirt that her family said did not belong to her. The deliberate way the bag had been double wrapped and buried suggested concealment, not accidental loss. The FBI analyzed the contents at Quantico, but released few details publicly. From this point forward, authorities began to treat the case as an abduction rather than a simple runaway. Over the next decade, the Degree family continued to push for answers, appearing on national television programs and maintaining Asha's memory with an annual walk along Highway 18 from their home to a billboard erected near the last confirmed sighting. The billboard displayed Asha's picture and contact information for the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office and the FBI. In February 2015, the FBI officially reopened the investigation, offering a $25,000 reward for information, later raised to $45,000 with community support. In May 2016, a new witness reported seeing a dark green 1970s Lincoln Continental Mark I View, or possibly a Ford Thunderbird, near where Asha was last seen. The FBI identified this vehicle as a car of interest and asked the public for leads. By 2018, investigators released more details about the items in Asha's backpack, highlighting the Dr. Seuss book and the unfamiliar t-shirt as potentially significant. In 2020, an inmate named Marcus Mellon claimed to have knowledge of Asha's fate, but his story collapsed under scrutiny and produced no evidence. A stunning shift occurred in 2024 and 2025, when modern DNA and forensic genealogy techniques linked evidence from Asha's belongings to members of the Dedmon family in Cleveland County. Searches of multiple properties recovered a dark green 1964 AMC Rambler similar in style to the previously reported vehicle. Investigators stated they believed Asha had been killed and that her remains were hidden. DNA reportedly connected items from Asha's backpack to Annalee Dedmon, who was 13 in 2000, and to Russell Underhill, a family associate who died in 2004. Text messages recovered from Dedmon family members suggested knowledge of an accident and a cover-up. Polygraph results added to suspicions, though no arrests have been made as of late 2025. The timeline from 2000 to 2025 therefore unfolds as follows: February 2000 or disappearance, initial search, shed items recovered. August 2001 backpack discovered buried in Burke County. 2000s to 2010s public appeals, national media coverage, yearly walks, scholarship in Asha's name. 2015 to 2018 FBI reinvestigation, new leads, car of interest, reward increases. 2020 to 2021 inmate claims lead nowhere. 2024 authorities declare case a homicide, search Dedmon properties, DNA linked to family members. 2025 further warrants, polygraphs, texts implicating Dedmon daughters, reward raised to $75,000. Despite the passage of 25 years, the case remains unsolved. No body has been found, and no one has been charged. Yet the Degree family continues to believe that answers will come, holding firm to their faith and their community's support. The disappearance of Asha Degree endures as one of the most haunting mysteries in American true crime, a story where every new clue deepens the sense of loss and the demand for justice. One of the earliest explanations considered in the disappearance of Asha Degree was the possibility that she had chosen to leave home of her own accord. To investigators who arrived at the Degree household on the morning of February 14, 2000, the lack of forced entry, the missing backpack, and the careful absence of certain belongings suggested an intentional departure rather than an abduction. For months, and in some ways for years, the Runaway hypothesis remained a central thread of discussion, debated by police, the media, and the community. Understanding why this idea seemed plausible at first, and why it ultimately collapses under closer scrutiny, is crucial to grasping the complexity of the case. At the center of this theory is the backpack. Asha's school bag was missing when her mother discovered her absence. Later, when the bag resurfaced 18 months afterward in Burke County, its contents appeared carefully selected clothing, school supplies, her basketball uniform, and family photographs. These were not random items a child might grab in a hurry. They suggested premeditation. She had chosen things that were personally significant and practical outfits for a journey, symbols of her identity, and reminders of her loved ones. To detectives trained to read meaning into such details, this preparation looked like the work of a child planning to leave home for more than a few hours. The items echoed classic motifs of childhood runaway attempts. Many children who run away pack talismans of comfort and continuity, favorite clothes, toys, or pictures of family. They are not severing ties. Rather, they are trying to carry their sense of home with them while escaping some immediate stress. In Asha's case, the inclusion of her basketball uniform may have reflected pride or unfinished business in that sphere of her life, while the photographs indicate she did not intend to abandon her family emotionally. To some observers, this selection fit the template of a naïve but deliberate runaway. The influence of literature also shaped the runaway theory. At the time, Asha's fourth grade class had been reading The Whipping Boy, a children's novel by Sid Fleischman. The story revolves around two boys who run away and embark on a series of adventures. Teachers and classmates later noted that Asha was engaged with the book. Investigators speculated that the tale might have sparked her imagination, presenting the idea of running away as a grand adventure rather than a frightening ordeal. This connection between fiction and action is not far-fetched. Children often internalize narratives they encounter in school and use them to frame their own decisions. Some in law enforcement argued that the novel, combined with other age-appropriate adventure stories, could have planted the seed that leaving home would lead to excitement, independence, or heroism. Compounding this literary influence was the emotional turmoil Asha experienced during her basketball game on February 12, 2 days before she vanished. The team's first loss of the season weighed heavily on her. She fouled out and believed she bore responsibility for the defeat. Witnesses recalled her crying and feeling she had let down her teammates. Although she seemed to recover by the end of the day, laughing with friends and enjoying Valentine candy, the sting may have lingered. For a conscientious and perfectionist 9-year-old, the shame of that loss could have been magnified into something unbearable. Runaway theorists argue that this psychological blow, however minor it might seem to adults, could have provided the emotional trigger for her decision. The runaway hypothesis, therefore, paints a picture of a sensitive child nursing feelings of failure, inspired by stories of adventure, and acting out by secretly preparing for a journey. It provides a neat explanation for the missing backpack and the personal items. It also aligns with known developmental patterns. Children sometimes run away to cope with stress, to seek control, or to test boundaries. The sighting of Asha walking alone in the early hours, carrying her bag with determination, appears at first glance to confirm the narrative. Yet when measured against the realities of Asha's character and the circumstances of that night, the theory quickly unravels. The strongest contradiction lies in her personality. Asha was known as cautious, shy, and deeply obedient. She was afraid of the dark, frightened of dogs, and uneasy with strangers. Even among family, she was not adventurous or rebellious. The notion that such a child would voluntarily slip out into a stormy February night, walking along a rural highway in torrential rain, clashes with every description given by relatives, teachers, and friends. The environmental conditions compound the improbability. The night of February 13 and 14 was stormy, with heavy rain, gusting winds, and temperatures near freezing. Power outages across Shelby underscored the severity of the weather. For a 9-year-old who feared storms, leaving the safety of her bed to trek down an unlit highway in such conditions is difficult to reconcile. Most runaway attempts by children occur during the day, after conflicts at home, or in the company of friends, not in the dead of night during dangerous weather. Another contradiction is the lack of motive. Runaways typically leave to escape conflict, mistreatment, or intolerable circumstances. By every account, Asha's home life was stable and loving. Her parents were strict but caring, and she had no history of rebellion. There were no signs of mistreatment, neglect, or deep family discord. The disappointment of a basketball game, however painful to her, hardly rises to the level that normally drives a child to abandon her home. Even if she momentarily felt humiliated, she showed resilience later that evening and the following day, smiling at church and playing with cousins. Moreover, the distance involved further challenges the runaway theory. The backpack was found 26 miles from her home, buried in plastic bags. A 9-year-old traveling on foot in inclement weather could not plausibly cover that distance. Someone else had to be involved, either by transporting her willingly or by abducting her after she left. The deliberate burial of the backpack points more to adult intervention than to the actions of a child. Even the eyewitness accounts complicate the runaway idea. One driver described Asha as walking with purpose, but when approached she panicked and ran into the woods. This reaction suggests fear of being caught rather than excitement about adventure. If she were joyfully enacting a runaway fantasy inspired by a novel, she might not have reacted with such terror. Instead, her flight into the darkness could indicate she was confused, frightened, or already second-guessing her decision. From the perspective of law enforcement, the runaway theory initially served as a pragmatic explanation. Without signs of forced entry, with personal belongings missing, and with no evidence of immediate foul play, assuming voluntary departure was logical. It guided the first stages of investigation, focusing on whether she had hidden somewhere nearby or might return on her own. But as the case evolved, and especially after the backpack discovery, the theory lost credibility. Authorities shifted from treating the disappearance as a runaway case to labeling it a probable abduction. The limitations of the runaway hypothesis highlight an important tension in child disappearance cases: the difference between plausible surface indicators and deeper psychological realities. A missing backpack can be read as preparation, but it can also be reinterpreted as staging or concealment by someone else. A child's recent disappointment can be viewed as a motive, yet it might have been fleeting rather than decisive. Fictional stories can inspire children, but they rarely override deep-seated fears of the dark and storms. In Asha's case, the contradictions outweighed the consistencies. Ultimately, the runaway theory explains certain details, most notably the packed bag and the initial sightings, but fails to address the broader context. Asha's temperament, the hostile weather, the distance of the backpack's discovery, and the lack of any compelling motive all undermine the idea that she chose to leave home for good. More likely, if she did step outside willingly, it was not to run away permanently, but to meet someone she trusted, or she was coaxed into leaving under false pretenses. Once she entered the night, forces beyond her control quickly overwhelmed her. For investigators and the Degree family, rejecting the runaway explanation did not diminish the pain. If anything, it deepened it, because discarding that possibility meant accepting foul play. A runaway might return. An abduction rarely ends that way. The runaway hypothesis, then, is less a complete theory than a haunting reminder of how easy it is to misread the small signs a child leaves behind. It serves as a cautionary tale in itself. Never assume that a child's disappearance can be explained by the simplest narrative, because beneath the surface lie complexities that demand patience, nuance, and relentless pursuit of the truth. When traditional explanations for a child's disappearance prove insufficient, investigators and commentators often turn to more unusual possibilities. In the case of 9-year-old Asha Degree, two such theories occasionally surface in public discussion: that she may have been sleepwalking when she left her home in the early hours of February 14, 2000, or that she was the victim of an accidental hit and run which was then covered up by those responsible. Neither theory commands broad consensus, but both illustrate how desperate the search for answers has become and how every detail of the case can inspire competing interpretations. The sleepwalking hypothesis is rooted in the testimony of Asha's older brother, O'Brien. On the night of her disappearance, after their father Harold had checked on them at 2:30 a.m., O'Brien recalled hearing the sound of Asha's bed creaking. Half awake, he glanced across the room and saw his sister standing next to her bed. Believing she was heading to the bathroom, he paid little attention and quickly drifted back to sleep. Later, he heard more movement, but again assumed it was ordinary restlessness. In hindsight, those small noises and fleeting glimpses take on greater significance. Some child psychologists have argued that at age 9, it is not uncommon for children to experience episodes of sleepwalking. During such episodes, they may sit up, walk around the room, or even wander outdoors, all without conscious awareness. There are well-documented cases of children unlocking doors, stepping into the yard, or engaging in surprisingly complex behaviors while still effectively asleep. To those who champion this idea, Asha's departure from the house in the middle of the night might fit this pattern. Her brother's half-remembered observation of her standing silently in the dark room strengthens the possibility. Yet the more the details are considered, the more the theory strains under its own weight. Sleepwalking typically involves simple, repetitive actions, not extended planning or purposeful decision-making. What investigators believe Asha did before leaving home, changing out of her nightgown into different clothing, packing her school backpack with multiple outfits, her basketball uniform, and photographs of her family, demonstrates an unusual level of deliberation. These actions suggest conscious intention, not the automatic behavior of a child in a sleepwalking state. The very fact that she brought a backpack at all undermines the plausibility of sleepwalking. Children who wander in their sleep rarely prepare supplies or select sentimental items. Moreover, the eyewitness accounts from the highway complicate the picture. Between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m., motorists saw Asha walking purposefully along Highway 18, carrying her backpack in the rain. One described her as striding, with determination. Such a description does not align with the uncoordinated gait of a sleepwalker. Nor does the fact that she reacted with fear when one driver slowed to check on her, bolting into the woods as though aware of danger. These responses indicate consciousness, however distressed, rather than a trance-like state. In the end, the sleepwalking hypothesis explains only one fragment of the evidence: O'Brien's brief glimpse of his sister standing near her bed. While this might initially resemble the beginning of a sleepwalking episode, the subsequent behaviors, dressing, packing, walking a mile from home, point clearly to intention. For most investigators and analysts, sleepwalking remains more of a curiosity than a credible explanation. The second unconventional theory is that Asha fell victim to an accidental hit and run. The foundation of this idea lies in the timeline. Multiple drivers reported seeing a small child on the highway during a rainstorm. Highways at night are inherently dangerous, and visibility in a storm is poor. It is conceivable, proponents argue, that a motorist struck Asha unintentionally. Overcome with fear and guilt, the driver may have panicked, concealed her body, and disposed of her belongings to erase evidence. This scenario has intuitive appeal, because it offers a straightforward explanation for the total lack of physical evidence and the absence of a body. Unlike premeditated abduction theories, it does not require assuming elaborate planning or malicious intent. Instead, it casts the event as a tragic accident compounded by cowardice. A frightened driver, perhaps intoxicated, unlicensed, or with a criminal record, might have felt that reporting the collision would end their own life as they knew it. In desperation, they may have hidden the evidence and remained silent for decades. However, the hit-and-run theory collides with hard physical realities. Typically, when a pedestrian is struck by a vehicle at significant speed, traces remain at the scene: blood on the pavement, fabric fibers, broken glass, or debris from the car. Despite extensive searches along Highway 18 in the days following Asha's disappearance, investigators found no such evidence. The rainstorm may have washed away some signs, but not all. In comparable cases, forensic teams have recovered traces even after severe weather. The complete absence of material clues weakens the theory considerably. Additionally, the discovery of Asha's backpack undermines the hit-and-run explanation. 18 months later, the bag was found buried 26 miles away, double-wrapped in plastic trash bags. This is not the spontaneous act of a panicked driver attempting to cover up an accident in the middle of the night. It suggests deliberate concealment over time, possibly involving more than one person. The effort to preserve and hide the bag points toward intentional foul play, not an accident. If a motorist had killed her unintentionally, why take the trouble to transport and bury the backpack so carefully, instead of discarding it quickly? Furthermore, the distance of the backpack's discovery makes little sense in the hit-and-run scenario. The site in Burke County was far from Shelby, requiring significant effort to reach. A panicked driver would more likely attempt to hide evidence closer to the scene, not transport it across county lines. The burial of the bag appears methodical, not frantic. Proponents of the accident theory sometimes respond that the driver could have enlisted the help of friends or family after the fact, moving and hiding items later. This possibility cannot be entirely dismissed, but it complicates the narrative to the point of improbability. Each added step: striking a child, recovering her belongings, conspiring with others, and staging a careful burial makes the accident resemble intentional concealment more than panic. The emotional profile of Asha also challenges the hit-and-run hypothesis. If she were indeed walking alone in the rain, she was vulnerable. But the determination described by witnesses suggests she was headed somewhere specific. A child wandering aimlessly would be at higher risk of straying into traffic. A child walking with intent is less likely to step into the path of a vehicle. While not impossible, the odds diminish. Ultimately, both the sleepwalking and hit-and-run theories serve as reminders of how unsatisfactory the available evidence remains. They offer partial answers. Sleepwalking accounts for O'Brien's recollection, and hit-and-run explains the possibility of accidental harm. But neither stands up under scrutiny. Sleepwalking collapses when faced with the deliberate packing of belongings and the purposeful stride observed by witnesses. Hit-and-run falls apart against the absence of physical evidence and the carefully buried backpack miles away. Investigators and the Degree family have largely set aside these theories, focusing instead on abduction and foul play. Yet their persistence in public conversation demonstrates the human need to find meaning, even in unlikely possibilities. In a case where every lead seems to evaporate, even improbable theories are revisited, dissected, and debated. For the Degree family, neither theory offers comfort. Sleepwalking implies that Asha left home without awareness, but it cannot explain her prolonged absence or the concealment of her belongings. Hit-and-run portrays her as a victim of tragic chance, but the elaborate aftermath contradicts the image of an impulsive accident. Both hypotheses highlight the central frustration of the case. Too much evidence points to deliberation, but too little evidence identifies who was responsible. In conclusion, while the sleepwalking and accident theories remain part of the broader tapestry of speculation surrounding Asha Degree's disappearance, they are best understood as intellectual exercises rather than persuasive explanations. Each theory tries to reconcile puzzling fragments of the story, yet both fall short of capturing the full truth. The child who left her Shelby home in the early hours of Valentine's Day 2000 was not simply wandering in her sleep, nor was she most likely struck down by chance. The evidence suggests something more intentional, more disturbing, and still unresolved after a quarter of a century. Among the many explanations for the disappearance of 9-year-old Asha Degree, perhaps the most straightforward and chilling is the idea that she was abducted by a stranger. This hypothesis has endured for 25 years because it provides a simple explanation for the most baffling elements of the case, the suddenness of her disappearance, the fact that she was last seen alone on a highway, and the deliberate concealment of her belongings miles away, unlike theories of voluntary flight, sleepwalking, or accidental harm. The stranger abduction model acknowledges that a child walking alone in the early hours of a stormy Valentine's morning would have been profoundly vulnerable to anyone with malicious intent. Support for this theory begins with the eyewitness accounts. Between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m. on February 14, 2000, multiple drivers spotted Asha walking south along Highway 18, roughly 1 mile from her home. One truck driver, unsettled by the sight of such a young child, trudging through the rain in the middle of the night, turned around several times to check on her. When he slowed down and rolled down his window to ask if she was all right, the girl reacted in fear. She bolted off the roadside and disappeared into a wooded area. This moment has been replayed countless times in the minds of investigators and family members. If Asha vanished into the woods, what happened next? The stranger abduction theory suggests that someone was already nearby or arrived shortly thereafter and seized the opportunity to take her. The next critical piece of evidence is the discovery of her backpack. In August 2001, 18 months after she disappeared, a construction worker in Burke County unearthed 2 plastic garbage bags buried off the roadside 26 miles north of Shelby. Inside was Asha's backpack, with her name written inside, containing clothes, school supplies, and other items. The double wrapping of the bag, the deliberate burial, and the distance from her last known location all point toward adult intervention. A child might discard belongings impulsively, but burying a backpack in layers of plastic requires forethought and strength. This was the act of someone who wanted to conceal evidence permanently. That burial site stands as one of the strongest arguments for abduction. Whatever befell Asha, someone deliberately took steps to hide the traces. The FBI reinforced the abduction hypothesis in 2016, when it released new information from a witness who had come forward. The agency announced that investigators were seeking information about a dark green 1970s Lincoln Continental Mark IV or possibly a Ford Thunderbird. This vehicle had reportedly been seen in the area where Asha disappeared. Both models are large, distinctive cars, easily capable of transporting a child unnoticed. The emphasis on the car as a vehicle of interest underscored the suspicion that Asha had not simply wandered away, but had been taken into a stranger's vehicle. Even though years had passed, the FBI hoped that memories of such a car might prompt someone to connect a neighbor, coworker, or acquaintance to the crime. The strengths of the stranger abduction theory are clear. It explains the totality of Asha's disappearance in a way that other hypotheses cannot. A runaway child usually reappears within hours or days. A sleepwalker generally returns to bed or is found nearby. Even an accidental death on a highway would leave physical evidence. Only abduction by another person explains why Asha vanished without a trace, why her belongings turned up so far from home, and why deliberate concealment is evident. It also fits the timeline. Asha left her house alive, was seen by drivers on the highway, then was never seen again. The window of opportunity for a predator was brief but real, and in that window she could have encountered someone who recognized her vulnerability and acted. Still, the theory is not without weaknesses. The most obvious is the lack of a direct witness. No one actually saw Asha being forced into a car or restrained by an adult. The last confirmed sighting is of her running into the woods. Everything that follows is inference. Without testimony of an abduction in progress, the case relies on circumstantial evidence: the hidden backpack, the suspicious vehicle, the behavior of a frightened child. Each piece is compelling, but together they form only a probable picture, not a definitive one. Another challenge is that stranger abductions, while deeply feared, are statistically rare compared to other causes of child disappearance. Most cases involve family members, acquaintances, or runaways. For investigators, positing a random predator requires extraordinary caution because it can deflect attention from people closer to the child who might have played a role. Yet in Asha's case, extensive scrutiny of family, relatives, and known offenders produced no solid leads. The absence of credible suspects in her immediate circle ironically strengthens the case for a stranger. Skeptics also point out that if a predator abducted her from the roadside, one might expect some trace, tire tracks, drag marks, or a witness hearing a scream. Yet searches along Highway 18 yielded nothing definitive. This silence leaves open the possibility that she was not taken by a passing driver at all, but encountered someone she already knew and trusted. Still, within the framework of stranger abduction, such a person need not be a total unknown. It could include a distant acquaintance or someone she recognized only slightly, but enough to lower her guard. The car sighting from 2016 adds weight but also ambiguity. By then, 16 years had passed and memories fade. Even if accurate, identifying a decades-old vehicle is difficult. Cars can change owners multiple times, and rusting green sedans from the 1970s are not unique. No definitive link between such a car and a suspect has ever been established. Thus, while the vehicle fits the abduction narrative, it remains a frustratingly incomplete clue. Despite these shortcomings, many investigators and true crime analysts consider the stranger abduction theory the most persuasive overall. It is consistent with Asha's last known actions, explains the carefully hidden backpack, and fits the FBI's later appeals. It also accounts for the cruel reality that after 25 years, no body has been found, no sightings have proven genuine, and no reliable trail exists. For something so complete and final, human intervention seems unavoidable. For the Degree family, the abduction theory is both terrifying and strangely consoling. Terrifying, because it means their daughter was likely taken against her will by someone unknown and possibly harmed soon afterward. Consoling, because it shifts suspicion away from the family and confirms what they have always insisted, that Asha was loved, protected, and had no reason to leave home willingly. The idea that a stranger seized her reframes her disappearance not as a voluntary act or a family tragedy, but as a crime perpetrated from outside. In sum, the stranger abduction hypothesis remains one of the most durable explanations in the case of Asha Degree. It rests on three pillars: the eyewitness who saw her run into the woods, the buried backpack that points to deliberate concealment, and the suspicious dark green car described years later. Its strength is its simplicity. It explains disappearance, distance, and concealment in one narrative. Its weakness is its invisibility. No one saw the act itself, and no suspect has ever been charged. Yet until new evidence emerges, the haunting image of a young girl walking alone on a stormy highway, vanishing into the trees, and never being seen again continues to fuel the belief that a stranger took her. And with her, the answers that her family has sought for more than 2 decades. From the earliest days of the investigation, Asha Degree's parents emphasized that their daughter was unusually cautious for her age. At 9 years old, she was not the sort of child who would talk freely to strangers, let alone leave the safety of her home in the middle of the night to follow someone she did not know. She was frightened of dogs, wary of unfamiliar adults, and happiest when she was within the boundaries set by her parents. These traits are part of what makes her disappearance so perplexing. How could such a careful child vanish without a trace? For many observers, the only explanation that fits her character is that she was lured out of her home by someone she already trusted. The logic behind this hypothesis is straightforward. If Asha had no history of reckless behavior and would not have walked off with a stranger, then her departure must have been prompted by a familiar face. This line of reasoning directs attention to the environments where she spent most of her time: church, school, and her basketball team. These were the spheres of her life outside the family home, the places where she interacted with adults and peers beyond her immediate relatives. Within such settings, it is conceivable that someone formed a bond with her, cultivated trust, and eventually persuaded her to meet them secretly. Church was central to the Degree family. They attended services at Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church multiple times a week, and both children were active in church programs. Asha would have known fellow congregants well, including other children, parents, and church leaders. Trust in this environment was automatic, reinforced by faith and community. If anyone from this circle approached her with a request, she might not have questioned their motives. School provided another sphere of relationships: teachers, classmates, and staff. Basketball added yet another, bringing coaches and teammates into her life. All these contacts represented potential points of access for someone who might lure her out under the pretense of friendship, mentorship, or a surprise. One angle sometimes discussed in the years after her disappearance was the possibility that Asha left home believing she was preparing a surprise for her parents. February 14, 2000, was not only Valentine's Day, but also the wedding anniversary of Harold and Aquila Degree. For a 9-year-old who adored her parents and wanted to please them, the idea of participating in a special secret plan might have been irresistible. A trusted adult could have framed an invitation as part of this surprise, perhaps asking her to come to a meeting place early in the morning, promising that it was for a celebration. Such a story would explain why she slipped out so quietly, carrying belongings, and why she walked with determination on Highway 18. She may have believed she was on her way to a joyful event. This perspective also sheds light on the Turner property shed, where searchers found items connected to Asha only a day after her disappearance. Candy wrappers from her basketball game, a Mickey Mouse hair bow, a green marker, and a pencil lay inside. Some have speculated that the shed was a designated meeting point, a place where she was supposed to wait for someone. Its location, near where she was last seen, adds weight to this idea. If an acquaintance had arranged to meet her there, the items might represent her presence as she passed the time. But if she was waiting for someone she trusted, what happened next is the darkest question. Did that person arrive and betray her trust? Or did another opportunistic individual intercept her while she was vulnerable and alone? The strength of the lured by someone she knew hypothesis is that it aligns with everything known about Asha's cautious nature. Unlike theories of running away or following a stranger, this explanation accounts for why she left home in the first place. For a 9-year-old deeply bonded to her parents, the notion of keeping a happy secret for them could have been a powerful motivator. For a child who trusted only those within her tight circle, the voice of a known adult or older child calling her out into the night might have been persuasive. The hypothesis also fits with the observation that she walked purposefully down the road rather than aimlessly. It suggests she had a destination and was confident she was headed in the right direction. Yet the weaknesses of this theory are equally clear. Despite exhaustive investigation, no concrete evidence has ever linked any specific individual from Asha's church, school, or sports teams to her disappearance. Hundreds of people were interviewed, polygraphs were conducted, and tips were followed, but no one emerged as a credible suspect within her circle. The idea of a surprise for her parents has remained speculation, never corroborated by testimony or material proof. Even the items found in the Turner shed, while suspicious, cannot confirm that she was waiting there for a familiar person. Without direct evidence, the hypothesis remains an interpretation of her character rather than a demonstrable fact. Another limitation is that the theory leaves major questions unanswered. If someone she knew persuaded her to meet them, what was their motive? Why would they lure her out in the dead of night instead of during the day? If it was meant as a harmless surprise, how did it turn into a crime? And if it was malicious from the start, how did an adult manage to groom or manipulate a child so closely supervised and sheltered by her family? These questions lack satisfying answers. Despite these gaps, the idea of Asha being lured by someone she knew continues to resonate. It is not as sensational as the image of a predatory stranger pulling her into a car, nor as improbable as sleepwalking or elaborate runaway fantasies. It is grounded in her personality and in the social context of her life. It acknowledges that harm can come not only from the outside, but also from within the circles where children feel most secure. For the Degree family, this possibility is painful, because it implies betrayal by someone they trusted. For investigators, it remains frustrating because without clear evidence, suspicion alone cannot lead to charges. As the years passed and new forensic tools were applied, other theories gained prominence, particularly those involving DNA evidence linked to the Dedmon family and the mysterious green car. Yet even in light of these later developments, the notion that Asha initially left home to meet someone she trusted cannot be entirely dismissed. It could explain the earliest phase of her disappearance, even if subsequent events involved other individuals. In this way, the lured by someone she knew hypothesis may coexist with later theories of abduction or cover-up. In summary, the hypothesis that Asha was lured out of her home by someone she already knew and trusted remains compelling because it fits her temperament and explains why she ventured into the storm. It acknowledges the power of community ties: church, school, and sports as both sources of security and potential avenues of exploitation. It offers a framework in which her purposeful steps along the highway make sense. But its weakness lies in the absence of any identifiable suspect or definitive evidence. It remains one of the haunting what-ifs of the case that Asha believed she was headed toward a surprise, guided by a familiar voice, only to vanish into the night. After more than 2 decades of frustrating dead ends, 2024 marked a turning point in the investigation into the disappearance of Asha Degree. For years, the Degree family and the broader community had lived with unanswered questions, revisiting theories of runaway, sleepwalking, or abduction. While the 2001 discovery of Asha's backpack hinted at deliberate concealment, no clear suspects emerged. Then, in early 2024, new forensic tools changed the trajectory of the case. Using modern DNA analysis and genealogical mapping, investigators uncovered links that had been invisible in 2000. What followed was a series of revelations that seemed, for the first time in years, to point toward real individuals who might know the truth about what happened to Asha. The FBI announced that DNA recovered from Asha's backpack, specifically from clothing and other items sealed in plastic bags, matched to 2 individuals. The first was Dedmon, who had been just 13 years old at the time of Asha's disappearance. The second was Russell Underhill, an older man with a troubled history who had lived in group homes connected to the Dedmon family before his death in 2004. This double finding was explosive. It placed both a teenage girl from the local community and a now deceased adult man inside the orbit of evidence directly tied to Asha. Investigators could no longer treat the case as simply a mystery of vanishing. The backpack now appeared as a crime scene in its own right. In September 2024, armed with this new DNA evidence, authorities executed search warrants across multiple Dedmon family properties in Cleveland, Lincoln, and Mecklenburg counties. These searches were extensive. Investigators deployed ground-penetrating radar, cadaver dogs, and drones to scar yards, outbuildings, and wooded areas. Among the most striking discoveries was a dark green 1964 AMC Rambler stored on one of the properties. The car immediately caught attention because it resembled the description of the suspicious vehicle that the FBI had flagged years earlier in 2016, a dark green 1970s Lincoln Continental or Ford Thunderbird seen near where Asha disappeared. Though the Rambler was technically a different model, it shared the same body style and era, leading investigators to consider whether eyewitnesses might have misidentified the exact make. The possibility that such a vehicle had been present in the Dedmon family's possession raised suspicions that their connection to the case was more than circumstantial. If the car and DNA provided physical anchors, what came next was psychological. The retrieval of iCloud messages from Lizzie Dedmon Foster, Annalie's older sister. These texts, uncovered through forensic examination of her digital accounts, contained startling admissions. In one exchange, Lizzie wrote, "I did it. Accident. Covered it up." The words struck like a confession, albeit brief and ambiguous. Was she describing an event from childhood? Was it a literal acknowledgement of responsibility for Asha's death, or a figure of speech? Investigators believed the message could not be dismissed. Combined with the DNA evidence and the family's proximity to Asha at the time of her disappearance, the text messages pointed strongly toward the possibility that members of the Dedmon family had played a direct role in concealing what happened that night. The weight of suspicion deepened further when a man named Thaddeus Valentine came forward with testimony about a party in the mid-2000s. According to Valentine, he witnessed Lizzie crying and saying, "I killed Asha Degree." He recalled that her sister Sarah quickly told her to be quiet, speaking in a way that seemed to shut down the conversation. Valentine later passed a polygraph about this recollection, strengthening his credibility in the eyes of law enforcement. While defense attorneys and skeptics pointed out that alcohol, memory decay, and the drama of a party setting could influence what was heard, the testimony added another thread to an increasingly tangled web. Faced with these developments, investigators sought to test the Dedmon daughters more directly. In February 2025, Lizzie was administered a polygraph examination. When asked whether she had concealed information about Asha's disappearance, her responses were flagged as deceptive. During the interview that followed, she reportedly said, "If my dad did it, he did it, but I had nothing to do with it." This statement both distanced her from direct responsibility and implicitly acknowledged the possibility of her father's involvement. It also raised the specter of a wider family cover-up. Taken together, the DNA evidence linking Annalee and Underhill to the backpack, the suspicious green car on Dedmon property, Lizzie's incriminating text messages, Valentine's account of her drunken confession, and the failed polygraph, investigators developed a theory of concealment. They believed that Asha may have died as the result of an accident, possibly involving one or more of the Dedmon daughters, and that family members, including the patriarch Roy Dedmon, assisted in hiding the truth. The phrase "accident" covered it up, echoed across interviews, texts, and investigative summaries. Yet despite the momentum, crucial elements remained missing. Most importantly, Asha's body has never been recovered. Without remains, investigators cannot establish a cause of death or link the Dedmon family definitively to her demise. The lack of a crime scene also means that much of the evidence is circumstantial. While DNA places Annalee and Underhill in contact with Asha's belongings, it does not prove how or when that contact occurred. The texts and testimonies suggest guilty knowledge, but they fall short of direct proof. The polygraph adds pressure but is not admissible in court. This tension defines the current state of the case. There are multiple indicators of a cover-up, yet no smoking gun. Prosecutors must weigh the risk of pursuing charges without a body, fearing that a failed trial could forever block further attempts at justice. Defense attorneys for the Dedmon family argue that the evidence is thin, reliant on ambiguous phrases and questionable memories. They highlight that Russell Underhill is deceased and cannot defend himself, and that contamination or secondary transfer might explain the DNA findings. The Degree family, meanwhile, experiences a bittersweet mix of hope and anguish. On one hand, the investigation has advanced more in the last 2 years than in the previous 2 decades. On the other hand, the failure to recover Asha's body or bring formal charges prolongs their torment. Each new revelation suggests answers are within reach, yet closure remains elusive. For Harold and Aquila, the idea that their daughter's death was accidental and then hidden by people in their community is almost harder to bear than the image of a faceless stranger. The broader community watches anxiously as well. Shelby has lived under the shadow of this mystery for 25 years. The name, Asha Degree, is etched into the town's memory, her image on billboards, her story retold annually during commemorative walks. The possibility that local residents people trusted within the community could be implicated is both shocking and divisive. Some see the evidence against the Dedmons as compelling, others caution that it may be built on sand. In May 2025, authorities increased the reward for information leading to an arrest to $75,000, signaling both their belief that someone knows more and their frustration at the impasse. By September 2025, the case was officially categorized as a homicide, but still no arrests had been made. The FBI and local sheriff's office insist that progress is being made, but the Degree family continues to wait. The 2024-2025 developments illustrate both the promise and limits of modern investigative techniques. DNA and digital forensics can uncover powerful new leads, but without a body or direct evidence, they cannot always produce courtroom-ready proof. In Asha's case, the advances point strongly toward the Dedmon family's involvement. Yet the absence of final confirmation keeps the case suspended in uncertainty. For the public, the narrative is both haunting and frustrating, a child's disappearance that finally appears solvable, but not yet solved. As of late 2025, the official line is clear. Investigators believe Asha Degree was killed, likely in an accident, and that members of the Dedmon family concealed the truth. DNA connects her belongings to Annalee and to the deceased Russell Underhill. A suspicious green car sits on Dedmon property. Lizzie's own words, both in private texts and alleged drunken confessions, implicate her in a cover-up. And yet, because Ash's body has never been found, the final step toward justice remains out of reach. The story is no longer just a mystery of how a little girl disappeared. It is now a story of secrets, silence, and the long shadow of concealment that has kept a family and a community searching for answers for 25 years. Over the course of 25 years, the disappearance of Asha Degree has generated an array of suspects, confessions, and investigative tangents. Some names briefly captured public attention, only to collapse under scrutiny. These episodes reveal the immense difficulty of working a case with so little physical evidence and highlight why. As of 2025, the Dedmon family remains the only significant focus of inquiry. The first major false lead came from a man named Baron Ramsey. In the early months after Asha vanished, Ramsey offered what sounded like a confession. He told investigators that he had been involved in a banned substances transaction on the night of February 14, 2000, and during that incident he accidentally struck Asha with a vehicle. According to his account, he panicked, placed her body in the car, and later disposed of it in Moss Lake, a reservoir near Shelby. To law enforcement, the story could not be ignored. They organized searches of the lake, sending divers into its cold waters and using sonar to probe the depths for remains or evidence. For a short time, the case seemed on the verge of resolution, but the deeper investigators pressed Ramsey for details, the weaker his account became. He contradicted himself about the timing, the location, and the method of disposal. He offered no corroborating evidence. Search teams found nothing in Moss Lake. Soon it became clear that his confession was a fabrication. Some suggested he had been motivated by a desire for attention, while others speculated he hoped to trade the false information for leniency in his own legal troubles. Whatever the reason, his claims drained resources and ultimately led nowhere. Another early avenue of inquiry focused on the Johnson brothers, Danny Ray and Herbert. Both men had significant criminal histories, including offenses involving child convictions. Herbert had even faced charges for homicide in the past. Given their reputations, investigators naturally examined whether either brother could have encountered Asha on the highway and abducted her. They were interviewed, their homes were checked, and DNA samples were collected to compare against items from Asha's backpack. The results cleared them. Neither man's DNA appeared on any of the evidence, and no witness placed them near the scene. Their prior records made them plausible suspects in theory, but forensic science eliminated them from the case. The Johnson brothers remain reminders of how criminal history can attract suspicion even without supporting evidence. A third name entered the conversation years later: Donald Ferguson. Ferguson was convicted in 2014 for the 1990 offenses involving children and murder of 7-year-old Shalonda Poole in Greensboro, North Carolina. His crime, proven through DNA, showed a pattern of targeting young girls, and he had also assaulted other children. When authorities reviewed cold cases after his conviction, Ferguson's potential connection to Asha Degree drew immediate attention. At the time of her disappearance in 2000, he was known to be in North Carolina, specifically in or around Spartanburg, which is not far from Shelby. The parallels were chilling. Both victims were young girls, both vanished near familiar locations, and both cases involved secrecy and concealment. Despite the disturbing similarities, no direct evidence ever tied Ferguson to Asha. No DNA linked him to her belongings, and no witness placed him in Shelby that night. Investigators concluded that while his profile fit the pattern of someone capable of such an abduction, there was nothing concrete to prove his involvement. His name lingers on the margins of the case, invoked as a possibility, but never confirmed. The final major false lead surfaced 2 decades later, in 2020, when an inmate named Marcus Mellon contacted authorities with claims that he knew the truth about Asha's fate. He alleged he had knowledge of where her remains could be found and how she had been killed. For a family desperate for answers, and a law enforcement community still searching for closure, his information demanded attention. Investigators followed up, checking the sites Mellon described. Once again, hope gave way to disappointment. The details Mellon provided could not be corroborated. Searches of the areas he mentioned turned up nothing. His statements, like Ramsey's before him, were written off as another self-serving attempt at notoriety or favorable treatment within prison. By 2021, officials confirmed that Mellon's claims were false, leaving the case no closer to resolution. When viewed together, these episodes illustrate the pattern of dead ends that defined the investigation for much of its history. Ramsey fabricated a confession. The Johnson brothers were eliminated through DNA testing. Ferguson was a dangerous predator but unconnected to Asha by any hard evidence. Mellon's prison story proved baseless. Each diversion consumed time, raised public expectations, and ultimately collapsed. For the Degree family, these cycles were agonizing. Every apparent breakthrough ended in heartbreak. As of 2025, only the Dedmon family connection continues to stand. Unlike the others, the evidence is multi-layered. DNA from Asha's backpack tying to Annalee Dedmon and Russell Underhill, the suspicious green AMC Rambler found on Dedmon property, incriminating iCloud messages from Lizzie Dedmon Foster, and a witness recalling her drunken confession at a party. While a body has not been found and no arrests have been made, this collection of physical, digital, and testimonial evidence is far stronger than any lead before it. The long history of false suspects serves as a sobering reminder of how elusive justice can be. Investigators followed every confession, every rumor, every connection to known offenders, but most paths led nowhere. Today, the Dedmon evidence remains the only avenue that has not been shut down, making it the focal point of hope that the truth about what happened to Asha Degree will finally emerge. 25 years after Asha Degree vanished, her family still lives in Shelby, North Carolina. They remain in the same modest neighborhood, carrying the weight of unanswered questions but refusing to let her memory fade. Each year on February 14, the Degrees organize a walk of remembrance. The route traces the path along Highway 18, where Asha was last seen, ending at the billboard that bears her image. The walk is both ritual and protest, a statement that while time has passed, the community must not forget the girl who disappeared in the early hours of Valentine's Day 2000. In 2008, the family established a scholarship fund in Asha's name. The Asha Degree Scholarship Foundation supports local students, reflecting the value that Harold and Aquila placed on education and perseverance. For the Degrees, the scholarship is more than financial aid. It is a way to give Asha's unrealized future back to other children. Each award keeps her presence active in Shelby's schools and churches, ensuring that she remains more than just a photograph on a poster. The most visible reminder of her case is the large billboard erected along Highway 18. It features age progression images created by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, showing how Asha might look today. Updated periodically, these renderings stare out at drivers as they pass through Cleveland County. For some, the billboard is a constant source of grief, reminding them that a child once walked away and never came home. For others, it is a call to vigilance, urging anyone with information to come forward. The sign is a piece of living history, as much a fixture of the community as churches or schools. The impact of Asha's disappearance on Shelby has been profound. Before 2000, many families in the town left their doors unlocked at night, confident that their rural setting insulated them from big city dangers. After Asha vanished, that sense of security evaporated. Neighbors began locking doors, drawing curtains, and questioning the safety of letting children walk alone. The case marked the end of an era of innocence for Shelby. Parents who once trusted their surroundings became more protective, and children who grew up hearing Asha's story learned to see the world with caution. Beyond Shelby, the case has also highlighted issues of race and media attention. Asha's mother, Aquila, has openly stated her belief that the disappearance of a young Black girl did not receive the same coverage as that of white children. She has pointed out that in cases like John Bennett Ramsey or Elizabeth Smart, national networks devoted endless airtime, while Asha's case often received only brief mentions outside North Carolina. Advocates for missing children have echoed this concern, citing the phenomenon known as missing white woman syndrome, where victims of color are less likely to receive sustained media focus. For the Degree family, this disparity has been a source of both frustration and sorrow, compounding the pain of loss with the sense that their daughter's life was undervalued in the public sphere. Yet even as awareness of these inequalities has grown, the case still poses unanswerable questions. Why was Asha's backpack buried 26 miles from home? Who placed it there, carefully sealed in plastic? Was her departure from the house entirely voluntary, or was she coerced by someone she knew? Did she climb willingly into a car, or was she forced? And above all, what really happened in those lost hours between 2:30 a.m., when her father last saw her asleep in bed, and 4 a.m., when she was spotted alone in the storm? These mysteries remain suspended over the Degree family and the community. For every person who walks the annual memorial route, the questions echo as loudly as the footsteps on the highway pavement. The scholarship, the billboard, and the locked doors all testify to the enduring mark of Asha's disappearance. But they also underline the absence of closure. Until her body is found, or until someone speaks the full truth, Asha Degree's case will remain not only one of the most haunting mysteries in North Carolina, but also a story of resilience, a family's refusal to let their child's name slip into silence, and a community's struggle to live in the shadow of unanswered questions.